All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend and enjoyed the extra time off. Markets, a little negative today. Had a nice gap up and then some selling into that this morning. Been seeing that a few days, even last week. If you look in the spiders here, we had a couple of gaps higher and we saw some selling into that. Today, seeing a little bit even more selling. Remember, it doesn't cost the institutions very much money to bid the market up in the pre-market or the overnight. But then once the real selling comes in, the real market comes in, they can actually sell into that and unload any positions they have. So they generally like to do their selling in during market hours when there's volume in order for them to make it easier for them to execute their trades without screwing up their average. But anyways, nice little fade today. Spiders even coming back in the last 10 minutes here. Market's about to close in the next 3-4 minutes. But, you know, I don't want to make too much out of today's action with the light volume. It's a lot of times what we call a holiday hangover. For instance, I myself didn't even get back from where I was. I was out in the islands all weekend, and I didn't even get back till about 1:30 today. Same thing happens with a lot of traders. They'll take you know, they'll leave early on Friday, and sometimes they won't get back, especially now with everybody not having been on vacation since, you know, earlier last March, or, you know, everybody waiting to go out for such a long time. You know, no one's in a hurry to get back. Nobody wants to get back to work. But so I won't make too much out of this action, but we are seeing a nice little fade. VXX perking up a little bit today too, so we'll see what happens there. I still have not added to that position. I'm looking to do that. I still think we have another potential flush lower on the VXX, maybe a move higher on the spiders. We'll see what happens here, but it's hard to make too much out of this light volume. And we're at 47 million. That's incredibly light. I do expect the volume to pick back up at least tomorrow as everybody gets back into the routine. But for now, major support levels here, you see right here, this is your base here, 417.94, the former gap fill, and you got the 20 moving average kind of creeping up with that. After that, your next support is the 410 area and this trend line that goes back to last March. If we zoom out here, you can see this trend line here going back to the March lows. This is a major trend line. As soon as this breaks and you take out this most recent pivot, really, you've got the 410 or the 400 gap fill here, which I think we have to test. We've never back tested it, so we gapped up over it and we kind of just ran with it. But typically levels like that are that big of a psychological level, 400 even number, when you're gapping over it and leaving such a wide gap like that, typically they've got to be back tested. But I think once you break this trend line, essentially all bets are off. Yeah, you break the trend line, lose that 100 moving average, I think this market is cooked. So you guys know I've been looking for a correction, and those are the levels that we got to get through first to get there. But we've got some work to do. Once the volume comes back, we could see a move lower. I talked a little bit earlier on Twitter about Apple. I can't remember if I covered this or not, but Apple, largest market cap in the S&P 500. And look at this pattern here going back to July of last year. Nice trend line coinciding with the 200 moving average, and you have a head and shoulders pattern. And you can also clearly see the head and shoulders on the weekly chart as well. So now it hasn't triggered yet. It's still forming, but a break of this trend line, I would say on especially a weekly closing basis, you close below that 200, and this thing's headed back to, let's see real quick, 45. As there's the closing bell. I mean, yeah, this thing's headed back to, you know, 100 or 90 bucks. I mean, you're probably gonna have to test this gap here. Markets are closed now, but this would be your long-term target on Apple, maybe even a little bit lower, maybe this pivot here at about $90. So yeah, I mean, like Apple, largest market cap in the S&P 500, it's going to carry a large amount of the weighting of the index. So if this pattern triggers, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the overall market. Anyway, wrapping up, markets close. Let's see where the spiders are at. Yeah, closing fractionally lower. VXX having a nice day, though, up 2.25. So there is a little bit of hedging. Last week, the VXX was down pretty significantly, which makes a lot of sense to me as short-term. So VXX represents short-term volatility more so than medium and long-term. like some other vehicles can track. So if volume is light and the market's knowing that a holiday is coming up, it makes sense that short-term vol would be getting hit harder last week, even as the market was basically flat. So maybe just making up a bit of that ground today could have been why the VXX was outperforming on a relative basis. Anyway, Q's negative pretty sharply as well. IWM having a nice day though, coming up and tagging this trend line. This is actually the area you want to look for a short here. I'm already in the TWM, so maybe I'll add if you can gap up a little bit tomorrow. And yeah, I think this is going to be major resistance here. If you get through that, it probably stalls out around 230. Yeah, nice little triangular pattern here on the IWM. We'll see if it bounces back off of that tomorrow. Let's see what else we have here. Just wrapping up here. Crude was positive here. Did close back below this pivot top here. We got here at 67.98, closing at 67.94. Yeah, so I think crude probably wants to go up and test that 70 handle. And I don't think it gets much through that, honestly. We do have a nice, I mean, I've talked about this breakout here of this downsloping trend line. It's a nice breakout there, but ultimately I think you run into a lot of resistance around $70. It has not done enough consolidation, in my opinion, to get through this 200. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it just means the chances are a lot lower. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up there and keep it kind of short today. Not a lot of volume. Don't want to make too much out of the moves this afternoon, but we will expect to see a little bit more volume pick up later in the week. All right, guys. Thanks again and take care.